I didn't know that a simple, "Did you like the chocolates?" could make my blood run cold. I never imagined that my own son's desperate tone, that tremor in his voice, that pause that seemed to hold back a scream, would be the sound that changed my life forever. It all started with that call the day after my birthday, when he was expecting a different answer, an answer that was meant to be fatal for me. The day before, when I received that box of gourmet chocolates, I felt something strange, something I couldn't quite place at the time. It was beautiful, wrapped in gold foil with a deep red ribbon, so elegant it looked more like an engagement gift than a casual present. My son rarely gave me anything, and when he did, it was more out of obligation than affection. But that box felt different, perfect, thought out, almost too deliberate. And yet, foolish me, I left it on the table without opening it right away. When he called the next day, his voice sounded nervous, as if he'd been rehearsing the conversation for hours. "So, Mom?" he asked with a false tone of enthusiasm. "Did you like the chocolates?" I was in a good mood. I had spent the previous afternoon with my grandchildren. They had seen the box and were more excited than I was. "Oh," I replied with a smile, "I gave them to your wife and the kids. They love sweets." There was a silence so deep I thought the call had dropped. "Mom," he whispered finally, "what did you do?" "Just that," I replied calmly. "I shared them." "What did you do?" he suddenly screamed. "Tell me you're joking. Tell me you didn't give them away." But before we continue, I want to extend a very special invitation. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. This helps me know you're supporting me and enjoying my stories. And comment below what city you're watching from. Now let's continue. That scream struck my heart. I had never heard him use that tone with me. It wasn't anger, it wasn't frustration, it was panic. A real, raw, visceral fear, a fear that made no sense. Until, for the first time, I imagined something impossible. What if those chocolates weren't a gift? "Why are you acting like this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Mom," his breathing was ragged. "Mom, listen, I need you to tell me if anyone else ate them. Where are they? Are there any left?" I put my hand to my chest. "The kids finished them. Your wife had a couple too. Why?" A groan escaped his throat. Mom, no, they weren't for them." My skin crawled. "Then who were they for?" He didn't answer. All I could hear was his broken breathing, his anguish, his guilt. I hung up, trembling, not fully understanding. I walked to the table where the box had been. The wrapping was still there, crumpled by the small hands of my grandchildren. I looked at everything with new eyes: the perfectly tied ribbon, the overly elegant paper, the handwritten tag, "For the best, Mom. Enjoy your day." Too sweet, too perfect, too foreign for the son I knew. I picked up the wrapping and examined it slowly. There was a tiny detail I hadn't seen the day before. One corner of the tag was peeling away. Lifting it revealed something that paralyzed me. A number, a small handwritten number, almost imperceptible. 27. 8 milligrams. I didn't understand what it meant. It wasn't a price. It wasn't a code. It seemed like a measurement, a quantity. A shiver ran down my spine as I held it between my fingers. My daughter-in-law called me. "Helen, the kids are vomiting. I don't know what's wrong." The phone almost slipped from my hand. "Vomiting? Since when?" "About half an hour ago. I thought it was a stomach bug, but I don't know. They're so pale." My stomach clenched into a fist. I looked again at the number hidden under the tag. 27. 8 milligrams. What substance is measured like that? My daughter-in-law kept talking desperately, saying she was taking them to the doctor, that I shouldn't worry, that it was probably something from lunch, but I wasn't listening anymore. I stared at the empty box, feeling something dark claw its way up inside me. My son gave me these chocolates. My son expected me to eat them. My son panicked when he found out others had eaten them, and now the children were sick. I put my hand to my mouth to stifle a sob. What had my own son done? What was in those chocolates? How could I not have seen what was now so obvious? I sank into a chair, clutching the wrapper, trembling from head to toe. My mind refused to accept it, but my heart already knew the truth. My son hadn't wanted to celebrate my birthday. He had wanted to end it. I hung up on my daughter-in-law with my heart in my throat. I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet. It was as if all the pieces of a terrible puzzle were starting to snap into place. The sick children, my son's desperation, the number hidden under the tag, the exaggerated elegance of the gift, an intuition so dark it turned my stomach. And still, my mind resisted accepting what my heart already knew. I grabbed my purse and left the house, barely feeling my legs. I couldn't stand still, I couldn't think. The only thing I could do was get to the hospital as fast as possible. The drive became a blur. Traffic lights, streets, cars, lights, everything blended into a single urgency. The children, my grandchildren, my little ones, the only beings in my life who had never asked for anything but love. When I arrived, I found my daughter-in-law sitting in a plastic chair, her eyes red and her hands shaking. Seeing me, she jumped up and ran to me. "I don't know what happened to them," she sobbed. "They were fine, and then suddenly they started vomiting, getting dizzy. They turned cold as ice." I hugged her, but my body was rigid. "What did the doctors say?" "That it was poisoning," she replied, her voice breaking. "But they don't know with what. They're running tests." My heart pounded so hard it hurt. "And you, how do you feel?" She swallowed hard. "I threw up too, but I thought it was stress." A pang shot through my chest. She had eaten them too. She was also in danger. She, without knowing it, had been closer than I was to the edge. They called us from the pediatric ward door. "Family of the Miller children." We rushed over. The doctor who came out had a serious but professional expression. "They're stable," he said. "They had a severe reaction, but they got here in time. We'll continue to monitor them, but for now, they're out of danger." My daughter-in-law burst into tears. I did too, but inside, one part of me was grateful for that miracle, while another part sank even deeper into horror, because it meant the chocolates did have something in them. "Doctor," I said in a low voice, "what kind of poisoning was it?" He hesitated. "We don't know yet. We found traces of an uncommon substance. It's not spoiled food. It's something added." Added. That word pierced my soul. The doctor continued. "The symptoms are consistent with certain alkaloids or substances similar to some pesticides, though in very specific quantities. 27, 8 milligrams. The number returned to my mind like a blow. "Is it something easy to get?" I asked, trying to stay calm. The doctor shook his head firmly. "No, not in that concentration or in a form that could be ingested without leaving a strange taste. Whoever mixed this knew what they were doing." My daughter-in-law covered her mouth with her hands, horrified. I felt the hospital walls closing in on me. "I want to see them," I said, because it was the only thing I could say without breaking. They took us to the room. My grandchildren were asleep, pale, with IVs connected to them. I approached slowly, stroked their warm little heads, and felt a lump in my throat that almost kept me from breathing. "Grandma," the older one whispered as he opened his eyes. My tummy hurt. My soul shattered. "It's over, my love. You're here with me now. It's over." I stayed by their side for a long time, and as I watched them sleep, something inside me began to connect memories I had buried. My son wasn't always like this. Or maybe he was, and I just never wanted to see it. I remembered when he was 12 and stole money from his father. I remembered when at 16 he lied, saying a friend had broken his phone when he had done it himself in a fit of rage. I remembered how he would mock me when he thought I wasn't listening. I remembered how he talked about life as if everyone owed him something. I remembered his ambition, his outbursts, his selfishness, and I remembered something else, something that chilled me to the bone. 2 weeks ago, he had come to my house with the excuse of checking on me. He made me tea. He watched me a lot. Too much. And as he left, he said, "Mom, you should take better care of yourself. At your age, you never know." At the time, I thought it was affection. Now it sounded like a rehearsal. My daughter-in-law interrupted my thoughts. "Helen," she said with a trembling voice, "I have something to tell you. I looked at her. The woman was devastated, but her eyes held something different. Fear and suspicion. "Your son," she whispered, "has been acting strangely these past few days. He insisted that we send you those chocolates. He wouldn't let me see the purchase. He said it was a surprise just for you." I felt dizzy. "And yesterday," she continued, "I got a call from an unknown number. A man asked if you had received the package yet. I thought it was spam." A coldness spread through my back. "A man?" I asked. "What did he say?" "Just that." "Has she received the package?" "Nothing more." The voice was dry, like someone in a hurry. My hands trembled. There was a second person involved, an unknown man, someone asking if I had the package. My son wasn't alone. It hadn't just been an impulse, a fit of anger, or a mistake. There was a plan. A carefully constructed plan. A plan that included third parties. A plan that needed me to eat those chocolates. And then an even more terrible thought crossed my mind. If my grandchildren hadn't eaten the chocolates, would anyone have checked my autopsy? Or would my death have been declared natural? I felt my blood freeze. My son had sent me a poisoned gift. My grandchildren had nearly died by accident. And there were still missing pieces of the plan because I sensed something with absolute clarity. This wasn't just about money. It was something bigger, something darker, something that was about to come to light. I couldn't sleep that night in the hospital. I sat between my grandchildren's two small beds, listening to their weak, steady breathing, as if each exhale was a small reminder that they were still with me. My daughter-in-law had fallen asleep in a chair, exhausted by the shock and guilt. Though I knew her guilt was not the greatest in that room, nor was mine. The real guilt was somewhere else, or rather, with someone else. At 6 a.m., a doctor knocked gently on the door. I got up without making a sound and went out into the hallway with him. His expression was serious. "Mrs. Miller," he said, "we have the preliminary results from the toxicology tests." My heart pounded with a dry thud. "What did you find? What was in the chocolates?" The doctor took a deep breath, as if choosing each word with surgical precision. "We found traces of concentrated solanine." The name was unfamiliar to me. My face must have given it away. "It's a highly toxic alkaloid," he explained. "It's normally found in plants of the nightshade family, but to reach dangerous levels, someone would have had to deliberately extract it. It's not something that happens by chance. It's not spoiled food. It's not produced by accident." My blood turned to ice. "So it was added." The doctor nodded with a gravity that made me tremble. "With precision and with knowledge. The concentration was so specific that it couldn't have been mixed by an amateur. Someone knew exactly what they were doing." 27. 8 milligrams. That number came back to my mind like a knife wound. "And were you able to trace where the chocolates came from?" I asked. "We're looking into it," he replied. "But I can tell you something else." He moved a little closer, lowering his tone. "This substance is not easily found, nor is it sold in stores. This requires contacts or access to laboratories." I felt my legs want to buckle. "What would have happened if my grandchildren had eaten a little more?" I asked in a faint voice. The doctor closed his eyes. "We wouldn't be having this conversation." I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. They weren't just chocolates. They were a weapon. And I had delivered it with my own hands to my innocent grandchildren. The doctor offered me a glass of water, but my hands were shaking too much to hold it. "Can I speak with the forensics expert from the lab?" I asked after regaining some of my voice. "Of course," he replied. "He asked to speak with you himself. He says there's something you need to see." That made me even more uneasy. Half an hour later, I was in a small analysis room where a thin man in a white coat was looking at a microscope. He looked up when he saw me enter. "You're the children's grandmother?" he asked. I nodded. "I have something to show you," he said, taking out a small, transparent bag. Inside was a tiny metal fragment. "We found this inside the chocolate," he explained. "Something so small it could have been mistaken for anything if we hadn't done a full analysis." He picked it up with tweezers. "It's part of a microtube," he continued. "It's used to transport substances in small quantities, Someone injected the liquid solanine into the chocolates, sealed the holes, and left this fragment inside, probably by mistake. My stomach churned. Can you tell where it came from? The technician looked at me solemnly. This type of microtube is used in pharmaceutical labs or research centers. It's not a household item. I was speechless. Are you saying someone with professional access was involved? Or someone close to someone with that access, he clarified. We're still analyzing. He paused for a moment and then added, but there's something more disturbing. He took out a box identical to the one I had received and placed it on the table. We did a quick search with the production code. This brand of gourmet chocolates was discontinued 3 years ago. My eyes widened. But my son sent it to me 2 days ago. The technician nodded slowly. Exactly. The box is old. The design corresponds to a limited edition that is no longer made. Someone either kept the packaging for years or deliberately obtained it outside the market. A cold sweat ran down my back. And why would someone do something like that? The technician looked at me cautiously. Because a box like this doesn't attract attention. It's a perfect gift. Elegant, vintage, special. It doesn't raise suspicion, and no one would think it had been tampered with. I felt a wave of dizziness. It wasn't just that my son had sent me chocolates. It was that someone had prepared that gift with a level of calculation that terrified me. Ma'am, the technician said, this wasn't an impulsive act. This is a plan. A thought-out plan. His words echoed my own intuition. A plan with steps, with timing, with execution. And I had only seen the surface. When I left the lab, my daughter-in-law was waiting for me on a bench in the hallway. She stood up when she saw me. Her eyes were swollen. Helen, she whispered. Is there something else? I approached her slowly. What is it? She took out her phone. It was shaking. Last night, while I was looking for the kids' insurance card, I found something in my husband's drawer. My heart lurched. What did you find? She opened her phone's gallery and showed me a photo, a crumpled printed sheet. At the top, it said, Application for Death Benefit. Policyholder, Helen Miller. I felt the air leave my lungs. He filled it out 3 weeks ago, she whispered, and he didn't tell me anything. My world became a buzzing noise. In front of me, my son's wife was crying silently. Helen, I think my husband wanted you gone. Her last words were a broken whisper. And yet I knew that wasn't the worst part, because as I held that phone and saw that form, I understood something terrifying. My son was just the tip of the iceberg. There was someone else behind him, someone with access, with knowledge, with intent. Someone who had perhaps been waiting years for this moment. When I held that application for death benefit in my hands, I felt my bones weaken. I never imagined seeing my name printed under such a macabre title, much less written by my own son. That sheet was the physical proof of something my heart was still struggling to accept. He had planned my death. There was no way to justify it. There were no excuses to soften the truth. He wanted me to disappear. For money. I stared at the document for a long time, as if the letters could transform into something else, as if it were possible to change what they meant. But no, they were final, undeniable. And what hurt me most was not his signature, but the date. 3 weeks ago. He had thought about it, calculated it, prepared it. It wasn't an impulse or a fit of anger. It was the pure coldness of a premeditated decision. My daughter-in-law's eyes were full of tears. I didn't know anything, Helen, I swear. If I had known, I never would have let the kids eat those chocolates. I hugged her. It's not your fault. You're a victim in this too. And she truly was. She had loved my son with absolute blindness, and that had dragged her family into a danger from which only a terrible coincidence had saved them, having eaten my chocolates. While waiting for more news from the lab, I went home. I needed to think. I needed to understand. And above all, I needed to remember. To dust off the corners of my memory where I kept fragments of who my son had been before he became this. When I walked into my living room, a painful silence fell over me. In that silence, my memories seemed to awaken like long shadows. I thought about when he was 10 and pushed a classmate out of envy, when he was 18 and faked a robbery to get money from his father. How he always looked for the easy way out, the shortcut, the convenient lie. I always justified him. He's young, he's confused, he needs guidance. But maybe it wasn't confusion. Maybe he always had a dark part that I refused to see. As I rummaged through drawers looking for some old document, I found something that stopped me. A box of photos. There he was as a child, smiling, hugging me, hugging his sister. And yet behind that childish smile, I could now recognize a different gleam, a mix of arrogance and calculation that I had never interpreted correctly. I collapsed onto the sofa and cried, not for myself, but for him, for what he could have been, for what he ended up being, for the immense void that a mother feels with the certainty that she raised someone capable of murder. I wiped my tears when the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a second, but I answered. "Mrs. Helen Miller?" a male voice asked. I felt a chill. "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Detective Harding. I'm leading the investigation into the miner's poisoning. I need to speak with you. I know you've been at the hospital, but there have been important developments." My breathing quickened. "I'm at home. You can come over." He took less than 20 minutes. He was a man with a serious face, a sharp gaze, one of those who seem to read more than they say. "Ma'am," he began, "we found two things that complicate the case and make it more serious." I let him into the living room. "Tell me," I whispered, almost voiceless. He took out a thick folder and placed it on the table. "First," he said, opening the folder, "we traced the package shipment. Your son didn't buy it at any store. It was assembled by hand. Someone got the vintage box, inserted the microtubes, measured out the substance, and took it to a courier company that doesn't require detailed identification. There was no way to deny anything anymore. He planned it," I said. "He did it." "Not so fast," Harding replied. "Yes, your son is involved, but he didn't act alone." My heart lurched. "What do you mean?" The detective took out another sheet. "We have security camera footage of the shipment. Your son appears, but he's not alone. He's accompanied by a man. A man who hands the box to the employee while your son looks away, as if following instructions. That man seems to be leading the action. He's not just an accomplice." I was frozen. "Who is he?" The detective took a breath as if weighing each word. "We believe it's someone close to you." "To me?" I asked in disbelief. He nodded. "Yes. Someone who knows your routine, your address, your birthday. Someone who has been in your life in recent years. Someone who is not a stranger to your family." A tremor ran up my spine. "Does he have a name?" The detective slid a photograph toward me. When the image came to rest on the table, my hands trembled. It was a familiar face, a face I would have never imagined there, a face that had been part of my life as if it were trustworthy. "Him," I whispered in horror. The detective nodded. "Yes, him. Your son-in-law, your daughter's husband." I felt the world go dark. But why? I could barely articulate. Because he also had a motive. The detective opened another sheet. "We discovered suspicious bank movements between him and your son. Small, repeated transfers, as if they were paying for something together. Furthermore," he continued, "we found his name linked to a pharmaceutical lab where he worked years ago." A buzzing filled my ears. "You mean the two of them?" "Yes, ma'am," Harding replied firmly. "Your son and your son-in-law worked together. This isn't just a family crime, it's an economic conspiracy, one in which you were the final obstacle." My breathing stopped. My son-in-law together, planning my death. Not out of hatred, not by accident, not on impulse. For money, for ambition, for convenience. And for the first time in this whole story, I knew with terrifying clarity. My survival wasn't a miracle. It was a threat to them. I stared at the photograph on the table as if I were looking at an impossible scene. My son-in-law, my daughter's husband, the man who had dined at my table hundreds of times, who called me Mom with a kind smile, who carried the garden chairs when he offered to help, who always treated me with that gentle courtesy one mistakes for respect. That man was there, in a cold image, holding a box that contained a lethal dose of poison, a box meant for me. I felt something inside me break in a way no previous betrayal ever had. If my son had broken my heart, my son-in-law had just torn it to shreds. Detective Harding, with his firm but compassionate voice, continued, "Your son-in-law worked years ago at an unsanctioned lab that was shut down after an investigation. They're looking for connections to the substance found in the chocolates, but the transfers between him and your son, those are the most damning pieces of evidence. Money has been coming in for months, small amounts, in very specific ways." My head was spinning. My son wanted my inheritance. My son-in-law. What did he gain? I closed my eyes to think, and then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. My daughter, last Christmas, said something that seemed silly at the time. "Lately, I think my husband is more interested in your financial life than ours." I had laughed. She hadn't. She had insisted. I changed the subject. What cruel irony. The clue was right in front of me, but I chose to ignore it. The detective's voice broke through my thoughts. "I need to know, Mrs. Miller, if you are willing to cooperate with the investigation. This is bigger than we imagined." I took a deep breath. "I'll do whatever it takes." Harding nodded, but before he could continue, his phone vibrated. He answered. He listened for a few seconds, and with a furrowed brow, he gestured for me to wait. He hung up. "More results just came in from the lab. They found partial fingerprints inside the wrapping, and they don't belong to your son." My stomach dropped. "Whose are they?" I asked. Harding opened a folder and pointed to something. "They're a 62% match with a registered profile. We're confirming 100%, but all signs indicate..." He paused. He looked at me. His expression said the truth would hurt even more. "Tell me at once," I demanded. "They indicate the prints could belong to your daughter." I felt the air leave my body. I took a step back, and then another, until I hit the wall. "No," I whispered. "No, my daughter never would." "We're not saying she's guilty," the detective clarified. "But she did have access to the package at some point. Maybe she didn't know what it contained. Maybe they used her without her realizing it." I wanted to believe it. God knows I wanted to believe it. But the seed of doubt had been planted. And doubt is a poison that spreads just as quickly as solanine. Suddenly, a terrible thought struck me. Had my daughter been manipulated, or was she part of the plan? Before I could process it, my phone vibrated. It was her. I answered with trembling hands. "Mom," she said in an agitated voice. "I need to see you. It's urgent. I'm scared." My heart raced. "What happened? My husband?" she said between sobs. "I found things. Terrible things. I need to talk to you. I'm at home. Please, come." Her voice didn't sound acted. It sounded broken, shattered. I told her I would be there and hung up. Harding watched me attentively. "Don't go alone. We'll go with you." I nodded. I had no strength to argue. The drive to my daughter's house was silent, tense, filled with a sense of foreboding that clutched at my chest. When we arrived, the door was ajar. I went in first, calling her name. "Emily? Where are you?" I heard her voice from the living room. "In here, Mom." She ran to me and hugged me tightly. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. "Mom," she whispered. "I don't know what's happening, but I found this." She handed me a crumpled envelope. Inside were papers, bills, bank statements, and a folder that said, "Patrimonial Reorganization Plan, Miller Case." I opened the documents with dread. What I saw left me speechless. A series of financial movements and notes involving accounts in my name, my home, my belongings, even my medical expenses. Everything was calculated to be transferred or liquidated upon the passing of the policyholder. My daughter was crying. "Mom, I didn't know anything. I found this in his study. He kept it in a folder with my contracts. I didn't know they were planning this." I hugged her with all the strength I had left. "It's okay, sweetheart. I don't blame you." She clung to me like a small child. He manipulated me, he checked my phone, he told me what I could and couldn't see. I thought it was just him being controlling, not this. Detective Harding intervened calmly. Where's your husband now? My daughter shook her head. I don't know, he left 2 hours ago. Said he had things to sort out. Harding exchanged a grave look with another officer. We need to check the house. It was then that my daughter said something that stopped everyone. Wait, there's something else. She wiped her tears and opened a drawer in the coffee table. She pulled out a small key. This key doesn't open anything in the house. And he hid it too well. I think it belongs to some place where he kept important things. Harding took the key, examined it, and his face tensed. I know what this is for, he said. It's a key to a safe deposit box. He looked directly at me. And if your son-in-law has documents there, it's very likely your son does too. I felt a chill so profound I had to lean on the sofa. Then, I whispered, that's where the last piece of the plan is. Harding nodded. Yes, ma'am. That box could contain the final evidence, or something worse. The proof that this wasn't just about money, but about a secret you didn't even know you had. The world seemed to stop. But before we go on, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in her shoes. Don't leave the video because what comes next will give you goosebumps. Detective Harding held the key between his fingers as if it were a sacred object, a crucial fragment of the puzzle that could finally open the door to the truth. I watched it, unable to look away. That small metal key seemed innocent, but I knew that behind it lay something big, something dangerous, something my son and son-in-law had wanted to hide at any cost, even the cost of my life. We have to go to the bank, Harding said. That box could contain documents, contracts, recordings, something that explains why they did all this. My daughter was still trembling. She sat on the sofa, holding her head in her hands. I don't understand how we got to this point, she whispered. My husband. Mom, if you saw the things I found, spreadsheets, notes, coded messages, as if he's been preparing something for years. Years, Mom. Her words pierced my chest. Years. That meant it wasn't a recent idea or a moment of desperation. It was a plan, a long-term plan of cold patience, calculation, and scheming. I took a deep breath to keep from losing control. Emily, listen, I said. You were a victim too. He used you. Don't blame yourself. She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. But I could have seen it sooner. The signs were there. He would get angry if you mentioned your inheritance. He'd get tense when you came over. He said you were an obstacle to our financial stability. How did I not understand? I went to her and stroked her shoulder. Because you don't imagine evil when it comes from someone who claims to love you. She burst into tears. Harding waited a moment and then spoke. We need to move. If your son-in-law or your son suspects we're onto them, they could destroy evidence. That sentence struck me like lightning. My son, my own son. At what point did I lose him? At what point did he change so much? Or was he always like this? And I protected him so much that I never saw it. I shook off those thoughts. Now was not the time to cry. It was time to act. The bank was far, a modern building of blue glass. Harding had requested an emergency warrant to open the safe deposit box. Thanks to the poisoning, the prior evidence, and the death benefit application, the judge didn't take long to approve it. As we waited at the entrance, my heart hammered against my ribs as if it wanted to run away, but I wasn't going to flee. Are you ready for whatever we find? Harding asked me. No, I replied, but I'm going to open that door anyway. They called us from inside. A serious, sweating manager escorted us to the underground level. The boxes were lined up like vertical tombs, cold, silent, immutable. Harding inserted the key with a firm turn. The box opened with a soft click. I held my breath. Here we go, the detective said. He pulled out a long metal box, placed it on the table, and opened the lid. The three of us leaned in to look, and what I saw chilled my soul. The first things were photographs. Dozens, maybe more than 100 photographs of me entering the supermarket, walking to physical therapy, watering my plants, talking with neighbors, waiting for the bus, leaving the bakery, getting mail, sleeping on the patio. Photos taken from afar, from hidden angles, photos in which I didn't know I was being watched, monitored, stalked. I brought my hand to my mouth. My daughter let out a sob. Harding stiffened. This is professional surveillance, the detective murmured. This is not the work of an amateur. There's more than just a financial interest here. This is organized surveillance. Underneath the photos were documents, maps of the places I went each week, schedules noted down, the routes of my walks, a calendar with days marked, days when I had medical appointments, meetings, or fixed routines. It was like seeing my life turned into a police file. And then we saw it, a yellow envelope. On the outside, handwritten, it said, Plan B. If Helen survives. I felt the world shudder. Harding opened the envelope with extreme care. Inside was a sheet of paper folded in 4. He unfolded it. I read the title and almost fainted. Procedure for legal incapacitation of the policyholder. It was a plan to have me declared incompetent, committed to a facility, and to take total control of my assets. My son-in-law. They had already considered the possibility that the poisoning would fail. And if it failed, they had a plan to destroy me without killing me. I leaned on the table to keep from falling. My daughter cried silently. Harding cursed under his breath. But there was still something else in the box, a black notebook. Harding opened it and his expression changed. My God, he whispered. He showed it to me. It was a notebook full of secret notes, dates, names, figures, assigned tasks, and a title on the first page. Strategic Partnership, MM plus RH. MM, my son, Mark Miller. RH, my son-in-law, Robert Harris. They were formal partners in a plan, in a conspiracy. And then the phrase that completely destroyed me. Final objective, immediate succession. I felt my legs give out. I had to sit down. The world was a tide that wouldn't stop hitting me. Harding closed the notebook slowly. It's over, he said in a grave voice. With this, they'll both go down. There's no way they can escape. But he hadn't seen the last thing. At the bottom of the box was a smaller envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a letter written in my son's handwriting. The first line read, Mom, if you're reading this, it's because everything went wrong. I gasped for air. Harding moved closer to read with me. I want you to know that none of this is personal. It's necessary. You've already lived your life. We're just starting ours. We shouldn't have to wait decades for your inheritance. It's not fair. It's not practical. It's not efficient. You'll understand when you're part of the plan. I'm doing it for the good of the family. Someday all of this will make sense. The letter fell from my hands. The detective took a deep breath. Helen, he said softly. This is the final confirmation. But I could barely hear him. My mind was elsewhere because at the end of the letter there was something else, a signature. And below the signature, a phrase I will never forget. P.S. If something goes wrong, we already have the steps for Plan C ready. My voice broke. Plan C? Harding looked at me with a cold seriousness. Yes, and now we have to find out what Plan C is. I never imagined the day would come when I would have to set a trap for my own son. But as I held that letter where he explained with chilling coldness why I had to die, I knew there was no other way. I was no longer a mother trying to understand. I was a woman fighting for her life, and I had no intention of losing. Detective Harding coordinated the plan with surgical precision. He'll come to you, he said. He already knows the kids are in the hospital. He'll want to know what the doctor said. He'll want to make sure they haven't discovered what was in the chocolates. But most of all, he added, looking me in the eyes, he'll come to see if you suspect anything. And I did suspect, and he needed to believe I didn't. That was our advantage. I returned to my house accompanied by 2 undercover officers. Harding installed small cameras in the living room, the kitchen, and the hallway. My daughter, still shaking from her husband's betrayal, decided to stay with me. I don't want to be alone, she said. I didn't want to leave her either. Late that night, we heard footsteps on the porch. A sharp knock on the door made us hold our breath. Mom, my son's voice said from the other side. We need to talk. My heart pounded in my chest. Harding nodded from his hiding spot, signaling me to open. I took a breath, turned the key, and opened the door. There he was, my son, my boy, and yet he wasn't my boy. His eyes had something different in them, a mix of urgency, irritation, and a fear he was trying to hide. Come in, I said in a firm voice. He entered, looking around quickly. Where is she? He asked. Where's my wife? At the hospital, I replied. The kids are getting better. The doctor said it was poisoning, but they're still investigating the cause. His lips tightened. A nervous tick appeared in his jaw. Listen, Mom, he said, moving closer. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know what happened with the chocolates. Maybe they were contaminated at the factory, or the batches got mixed up, or something. Every word was a clumsy lie, another stone in the grave he was digging with his own hands. Why are you so worried? I asked gently. He swallowed. Because how could I not be? They're my children. His children were poisoned by a substance he himself had paid for. I moved a little closer. Then explain to me why you screamed like that when I told you they ate the chocolates. His pupils dilated. He took a step back. I didn't. Mom, understand me? I heard you. I interrupted. What did you do? You said. You screamed. You were desperate. And now you want to convince me it was just a simple gift. He clenched his fists. The mask was beginning to slip. Mom, he said through gritted teeth, don't make things up. You always misinterpret everything. The old tactic, making me believe it was my fault. Emotional manipulation, gaslighting. I had seen it before. I had allowed it before, but not this time. I'm not making anything up, I replied calmly. Why don't you sit down and we can talk? My son took a step toward me with a fake smile. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm nervous. I just want to help you. Help me. The same word he used in his letter. I'm doing it for the good of the family. That's when I understood. He truly believed he was right, that my death was a logical solution, a formality, a patrimonial reorganization. That made him even more dangerous. I sat on the sofa, he sat across from me. The cameras were recording everything. Son, I said, my voice trembling but firm, tell me the truth. Did you know what was in those chocolates? For a second, he hesitated. A second was enough for the truth to peek out from his eyes. Mom, he said, looking down. Sometimes people do desperate things. My heart shuddered. Desperate? I repeated. Yes, he continued. Things that seem bad, but they're not so bad when you think about it, when you see the whole picture, when you understand that sometimes you have to make tough decisions. My breathing stopped. He kept talking. You're getting old, he said without looking at me. It's hard for you to walk. You get tired. You're alone. You don't have any plans. It's not fair for the whole family to sink because of a situation that could be easily resolved. Every word was a knife. Resolved? How? I asked. He looked up and made his fatal mistake. With a little organization, he said. With a smooth transition. No suffering. Smooth transition. No suffering. The exact language from his letter. I couldn't hold it together anymore. Not out of fear, but out of indignation. Out of the irrefutable certainty that this wasn't an impulse or an accident or external manipulation. My son wanted me to die, and he was justifying it. I leaned toward him. And who convinced you that this was the best solution? Your brother-in-law? My son turned pale. There it was. His mistake, his break, his confession. You know everything, he whispered. The cameras caught every word. At that moment, Harding opened the door with 2 officers. "Mr. Miller," the detective said, "you're under arrest for attempted aggravated murder, conspiracy, and racketeering." My son jumped to his feet. "This is a trap. She doesn't understand anything. I did it for the good of everyone." But it was too late. Far too late. They handcuffed him as he screamed my name as if I were the traitor. I just watched him, and for the first time in my life, I felt no guilt, no shame, no fear. I felt justice. It was the beginning of the end, and I still had to face the other monster. When the door closed behind my son and his shouts faded to a distant echo in the hallway, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Silence. A silence that wasn't empty or anxious, but a silence that let me breathe. For so long, I had lived trapped in fear, confusion, and betrayal, that this moment, however brief, felt like opening a window after a fire. However, I knew it wasn't the end. It was barely half the battle. I still had to face the other person responsible, the other mastermind behind the plan, my son-in-law, that man who had feigned affection, respect, and familiarity while organizing my death with cold efficiency. Detective Harding didn't give me time to sink into my thoughts. "Helen," he said firmly, "we have to move fast. We know where your son-in-law is, or at least where he was a few hours ago. But he might not stay put when he finds out his partner has been caught." My daughter, her face still pale from the pain of betrayal, came to me. "Mom, I want to go," she said in a tense voice. "I need to see him. I need to hear him say why." I took her hands. "No," I replied softly. "You've suffered enough. You're a victim in this too. You don't have to witness what's coming." She shook her head, a mix of anger, shame, and a deep sense of loss. "He's my husband," she whispered. "But he's also the man who planned to kill you. I can't just sit here waiting for news. I need to be there." Harding intervened. "I can allow it, but you'll have to follow my instructions to the letter. You are not to approach him. You are not to confront him. He could become violent if he feels cornered." She nodded. Her determination was a mixture of pain and newfound strength. Seeing her like this broke my heart, but it also gave me hope. She was no longer the submissive, manipulated woman her husband had molded. She was waking up. That afternoon, we headed to an industrial warehouse on the outskirts of the city, an old distribution center where, according to bank records and security cameras, my son-in-law had been coming and going in the preceding days. As the car sped down the highway, I couldn't help but think about the level of organization behind it all. He hadn't just helped poison me. He hadn't just watched my movements. He had waited patiently for the pieces to fall perfectly into place. He had acted with the coldness of someone who believes they have everything under control. But he hadn't counted on my grandchildren eating the chocolates. He hadn't counted on them surviving. He hadn't counted on me staying alive to see the hell his ambition had built. The car stopped. The gray structure of the warehouse rose before us with its rusty facade and broken windows. An empty, inactive place, perfect for hiding documents or planning things no one should see. The officers took their positions. Harding motioned for me to stay behind him. "Let's go," he said. We entered. The inside smelled of dampness and dust. Light filtered through cracks in the ceiling, creating diagonal stripes that cut through the silence. And there, at the back, among stacked boxes and old tools, was him, my son-in-law, Robert, sitting at a metal table reviewing documents as if nothing was wrong, as if there weren't children in the hospital, as if his partner, my son, wasn't in handcuffs. My daughter choked back a sob when she saw him. He looked up. When he saw us, his lips made an almost imperceptible gesture, a tiny, twisted, calculated smile. "Well, well," he said in a calm voice. The family, reunited. Harding stepped forward with authority. "Robert Harris, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, racketeering, and aggravated poisoning." He didn't stand up. He didn't even seem surprised. He just clasped his hands and raised his eyebrows. "So you talked," he said, looking at my daughter. "Lovely. I always knew you were soft. My daughter trembled, but said nothing. I took a step forward. I just want to know one thing, I said. Why? What did you gain from my death? Robert let out a soft laugh, like someone hearing an obvious question. Helen, please don't be naive. You had something we both needed. Your assets, your properties, your late husband's old storefront, the investments you made when no one thought they'd work. You were sitting on all of it, not using it, not moving it, not leveraging it. It was a sleeping treasure, dead money. My daughter brought a hand to her mouth, horrified. You were an obstacle, Robert continued, and obstacles are removed. That's how things work in the real world. It's not personal. Not personal. The same phrase my son had used in his letter. The same coldness, the same human misery. My voice came out firmer than I expected. So it was you who convinced my son. I just helped him see things clearly, he said, crossing his arms. He had his own motives, debts, frustrations, resentment toward you for having an easier life than him, according to him. I just put the pieces together. Harding stepped in. And Plan C? He asked. Robert smirked. Ah, so you found the letter. Very good. That means things went even worse than I imagined. Even worse? What is Plan C? I demanded. Robert looked me straight in the eye, like someone enjoying the final blow. Plan C was simple. If you survived and we couldn't have you legally incapacitated, then we would invent that you were a danger to yourself. A breakdown, a disorder, a psychotic episode. We already had everything ready to commit you to a facility. The law allows it if there's a risk, and a woman your age, alone, vulnerable, is perfect for that kind of diagnosis. I felt nauseous. My daughter burst into tears. Harding gritted his teeth. You're a sick man, I said, my voice breaking. A monster. He shrugged. I call it pragmatism. Just then there was a loud bang, a metal gate slamming shut. Robert turned and 3 officers rushed in. Mr. Harris, you're surrounded. Hands up. He raised his hands calmly as if it were all a formality. Easy, he said. I'm not violent. I don't need to be. They handcuffed him, led him out of the warehouse. Not a single tear. Not a hint of regret. Just the same serene expression of someone who believes the law is a game they can win if they counterattack well. But not this time. Days later was the preliminary hearing. My son, head down, still looking for excuses, avoided my gaze. My son-in-law, on the other hand, held his head high like a fallen strategist. When the prosecutors presented the evidence, the photos, the documents, the black notebook, the letter, the toxicology reports, the courtroom fell into absolute silence. It was impossible to deny. It was impossible to minimize. It was impossible to justify. They tried to blame each other. My son said Robert had the idea. Robert said my son had been harboring intentions for years. Both were telling the truth. Both were lying. Both were guilty. The judge ordered immediate remand. I walked out of the courthouse with my daughter by my side. She cried in my arms. Forgive me, Mom, she whispered. I didn't see who I had next to me. I held her with all my soul. You don't have to ask for my forgiveness, I told her. Sometimes evil hides behind habit, and no one is to blame for trusting. The blame lies with those who betray that trust. She continued to cry, releasing days, months, maybe years of manipulation, control, and fear. I cried too, but my tears were different. They were tears of relief, of exhaustion, of gratitude for being alive, of pain for all I had lost, but also of strength for all I had regained. I regained my voice, my dignity, my life. Today, as I write these words from my kitchen table, with the children healthy, my daughter by my side, and a sense of peace I thought I would never feel again, I understand that my rebirth didn't come from the punishment they received. It came from knowing that I didn't let them destroy me, that I fought, that I survived, that I faced the horror with my head held high, and that I will never again allow someone to decide for me. Not my life, not my death, not my destiny. Because today, at 67 years old, I know there is no age for rebuilding, and there is no betrayal so great that it can extinguish the strength of a woman who decides to rise. The day it all ended, I woke up before dawn. I don't know if it was habit, the silence, or that instinct that emerges when the soul finally stops fighting and begins to heal. I put on a light jacket and went for a walk in the garden. The cool morning air greeted me like a long overdue hug. It was the first time in months that my chest didn't feel the invisible weight of fear. For a moment, I took a deep breath and thought, I'm alive. I'm still here. And those simple words, which once seemed so small, now had the power of a miracle. My grandchildren came out onto the porch a few minutes later with sleepy smiles and tousled hair. Seeing them run toward me, laugh, hug me without fear, without pain, and without danger, was the greatest gift life could give me. As soon as I held them in my arms, I knew that everything I had gone through was worth it. Not because the suffering was fair, but because I learned that even in the darkest abyss, there is still light waiting for us. A light that reminds us we are not made to give up, but to endure. My daughter appeared behind them with a new serenity in her eyes, one I had never seen before. She had survived a marriage of lies, manipulation, and control. And just like me, she was learning to rebuild herself, piece by piece. I took her hand, and we both understood, without saying a word, that we were going to get through this together, that the worst was behind us, that none of the monsters who tried to destroy us would ever hurt us again. That thought filled me with a strength I didn't know I still had. I looked at the sky, felt the warm sun on my skin, and for the first time in a long time, I no longer saw shadows behind every memory. I didn't feel the weight of what I lost, but the certainty of what I still have. My life, my family, my freedom. And also something more powerful, the conviction that I deserve peace and that I have it now, that I earned it. And before we say goodbye, I want to extend a very special invitation. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like. It's a beautiful way to support me and let me know you enjoy these narrations. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories full of emotions, twists, and endings that will make you think. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, what you felt at the end, what you would have done in my place. Thank you for being with me.